We're going to get started in this room, so grab your coffees and grab a seat. Feel free to come on up to the front. There's tons of seats available up here. This morning, we are talking with Dr. Art Hister. Although Dr. Hister has been a well-known full-time media doctor since 1991, his major claim for respect from his family is that in 1969, he was at Woodstock. He was also the first full-time physician at the legendary Pine Free Clinic. Dr. Hister has been a health consultant to the BC government and currently serves as a consultant for several organizations, including the BC Alzheimer's Society and the Tapestry Foundation on issues affecting aging. His proudest achievement is his wonderful family, especially his wife, Phyllis Simon, and his 2 grandchildren. He's going to be presenting to us a presentation called Yes You Can, Simple Steps to a Longer, Healthier, Happier Life. Please welcome Art Hister.
Thank you, Erin. I used to have a ponytail. Can you believe it? Yeah, times were different. My kids don't believe it, not for a second. They think I'm bullshitting, but yeah, I was there. It's a great pleasure to be here and a great honor to have been asked to speak at this event. I can't tell you how touched I am that you thought highly enough of me to ask me to come here. The only problem is I'm under unbelievable pressure for a Jewish male. They've given me 40 minutes. I can't introduce myself in 40 minutes, and I have to go through these bloody slides in that time. So I'm going to talk a lot faster than I usually do. I talk usually very, very fast. This is going to be even faster. If there's anything you want to know about any of the slides afterwards, email me, come up to me. I'm going to be hanging around for a couple of hours. I'll be happy to go through them, give you more information about them, or if you have any questions. I'm going to tell you a couple of things about me before we get going. I always tell my audiences this because it's really important. You're looking up at me now. I can see the look in your eyes. Yes, I am much taller on television. The other thing is that, you know what you never get on TV? You know what? I've been on TV for 30 years now. They never say that I'm an MD. I'm a medical doctor. Have you noticed that? It's Dr. Art Hister. I could be a chiropractor, for Christ's sake. You know, I could be anything, naturopath. I'm a doctor. And you know what? It comes home to me. I got 2 incidents to tell you about why that's important, because not everybody understands that. My old friend Shell Buzzy, yeah, everybody knows Shell, right? He's a legend in his own mind, Mr. Shell. He had asked me to do a series of home shows with him across Western Canada. You know, I wanted to call it Shingles and Shingles, but he had no idea what we were talking about. So anyway, we're in Calgary doing this home show, and this young woman comes and taps me on the shoulder because I'm pacing. I'm a very nervous speaker, and I'm pacing before we get going, and she taps me on the shoulder and says, you know, I know who you are. And, you know, it's always nice to be recognized when you're out of town by women. You know, no, I've been married 47 years. That doesn't count. It's just nice to be recognized. So you know, I puff up my little chest. This is at the home show, and I stand up a little taller. And it's at the home show. She says, are you doing the painting or the renovating seminar? So I said, you know, lady, I'm a Jewish doctor. When I come to home shows, it's to get estimates. You know, what do I know about doing my work? And then, honestly, this happened about a year later. I'm standing in line at my favorite health food store, Starbucks, for one of my daily health food drinks, my double cappuccino, which I have 5 a day. And there's this young black dude. He's a really hip-looking guy. He's staring at me, and, you know, I think he thinks we're long-lost brothers or something. I don't know. Anyway, finally taps me on the shoulder. He says, man, I know you. And I said, oh, that's great. You know, another fan. He said, you play that doctor on television. I said, yeah, I do, you know. And I said, am I good? He said, man, you're awesome. And I said, well, you know, I spend a lot of time in my trailer memorizing illnesses, you know. It's not so hard. I'll tell you one other thing. I'm going to tell you this quickly, even though I don't have time, but you should know this about me because I am very nervous in my presentations. I'm a very nervous speaker. I pace a lot before I do these events. I have 11 gigs this month, 9 next month, and each one of them is going to terrify me and scare me until it's over. And the reason for that is because if you do as many as I do, you never know when you're going to hit what I call the audience from hell, right? They don't respond to anything. It happened to me about 5 years ago in Moose Jaw. Anybody here from Moose Jaw? Leave. Oh, leave, okay. It was awful. They didn't give a shit what anything I was talking about. It was the longest hour of my life. Well, you know, it was June and they were having another snowstorm. What do you expect, you know? They wanted to get home. Anyway, you never know when that's going to happen again, so you always think, oh, God, you know, this could be another moose jaw. So the way I calm myself down is I tell myself a story I once heard about John Crosby. You remember he was the old minister of everything in the Mulroney government. And John was a great speaker, a very funny man. And he had been asked one day to speak to the Canadian Association of Ophthalmologists, the eye doctors of Canada. And what happens when you come out for a national group, we don't have it happening here, but usually I do a lot of these events. You come out on a riser, and in back of you is some kind of a representation of what the group's all about, because they want photo ops. So usually it's a banner. You know, QP always has these huge banners. In John's case, because it's the ophthalmologist, they put up a plastic model of a human eye that was 70 feet across, you know? The largest human eye in the universe, right? So he comes out in front of the eye and he looks at the audience. He says, you know, I really didn't want to come here today. I was very nervous about addressing you. He said, but all of a sudden, I'm the happiest guy in the world that I'm not where my colleague Joe Clark is, because you see, right now, Joe's addressing the Canadian Association of Gynecologists. So, you know. So, you know, no matter how bad the audience is, there's someplace else you could have been that was worse, so, you know. Anyway, okay, I'm out of my time. Any questions? Okay, let's go. I've got a lot of material for you today, and I'm gonna give you the political perspective. Oh shit, yeah. I'm an author. All authors push their books. I don't think I'm allowed to sell my books at these events. Anyway, I didn't bring them. Although I do have a ton in my car if you want to come down and meet me afterwards. If you want to order them afterwards, I've got 2 of them. You can order them off the net. None of you are going to remember a word I've said within 5 minutes of me being finished. So you'll never remember the title. If you do want to order it, just ask for the one with my picture on the cover, and they'll ship it to you. See, everybody laughs at that. I don't understand. You never know. It could be 5 weeks ago. Anyway, okay, let's go. I want to talk to you about personal change. You know, to get better health results in any community, particularly in your community, it's going to take lots more than personal change. There's going to have to be political and social changes, and that takes a long time. But each of us as individuals can do something to live healthier. And if we each do it as individuals, then that will improve the health of the community. What I'm going to talk to you about is healthy lifestyle. I call my talk Yes, You Can, but my son suggested that I change it to this, because one day he was watching me practice it. This goes back about 20 years ago. He was about 18 years old, and I used to practice it a lot. And he stood there in the doorway, and he listened and listened to me going over my material, and finally said, Dad, you should change it to this SOS. And I said, why? Because I saved so many souls and lives. He says, no, Dad, it's the same old shit every time. He's a lawyer, and he works for the government now, you know. They got a good guy, you know. He's also the kid who walked in one day while I was getting out of a bath, and I was standing there naked, and he said, oh, God, there is no God in this world, you know. So anyway, he's a smart kid. But you know why? Everybody thinks they've heard all of this stuff that I'm going to tell you before, and you have. But what I'm going to try to do in the next 30 or 40 minutes is make you passionate about why this matters, because it's the most important thing as an individual that anybody can ever talk to you about. I'm going to start with something. When we have a lot of men in the audience, I have a particular health issue that really bothers me, and I'm going to start talking about that before we get into the general stuff. These are pretty up-to-date statistics. We're not doing bad, eh? At the turn of the 20th century, life expectancy in North America was about 45 years, so it's pretty good, huh? But there's a real difference here. There are 2 things I want to point out on this slide. I want you to see the second one. When we talk about Canadian statistics, yeah, we're doing pretty well. When you talk about Native communities, we're not doing nearly as well, and we need to do a much, 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 much better job of that. But take a look at that. What stands out? If you're looking at all of that information, what particularly would you say is unfair about those numbers on that slide? Yeah, women live long. Yeah, women get this all the time. The guys are still scratching their heads. What is it about Ethiopia, you know, Morocco, okay? Everywhere you look in the world, guys, Ben, pay attention. Women live longer than men. There isn't a single country where that's an exception. In fact, this is a study from a guy about 10 years ago saying that being male is the single riskiest demographic feature that you can have for yourself as a risk factor. And it gets worse with age. This is a study I just did on Global about 4 months ago when the statistics came up. Out of the 53,000 people over the age of 100 in the United States, 83% are women. In other words, when you get to the age of 100, there are 6 women. I can't handle one. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's why men don't hang on. I don't know. But anyway. But it is a real issue, okay? No, I'm serious. I want serious answers. Why do women live longer than men? This says, I know what you're going through, dear. I keep burying my husband. They keep digging him up. Why do women live longer than men? Serious answers. You go to the doctor, take better care of yourself. This is, okay, you don't need to, you guys can leave. That's the rest of my presentation, okay. I'm gonna tell you that, we don't really know, but there's lots of different theories. I was giving this talk to, actually here at the Hyatt, to the huge ballroom, 1,500 guys from all over the country, one of those men's animal groups, Elks or something like that. And at the back, when I put this up, why do women live longer than men? This guy's hand came up. He said, Dr. Hister, the reason women live longer than men is because they don't marry women. I said, well, maybe that's true in Ontario where you come from, sir. Out here, that's not the case. Anyway, and there was another one. This goes back a few years ago. I was doing this in Surrey, and the oldest couple in the world was sitting in front of me. You know how you can tell when old people hate each other's guts? They hated each other. They were together purely through spite. As soon as I put this up, why do women live longer than men? Her hand shot up. She said, we deserve to. Can't argue with that. Okay, but this is a serious health issue. I tell some jokes, but I really want you to understand there's serious message behind this. Women live longer than men for a number of reasons. One of the theories is that there are differences in hormones. And it's true. We generally say that estrogen is a protective hormone and men don't have much estrogen. I like to look at it the other way around. I think testosterone is a particularly problematic hormone. And I'll put you up a non-medical opinion as to why that's so. I'll slow it down for this half, okay? So, do you want me to read it carefully? It's pretty true. So, I'm doing this talk in one of these small towns, and this woman comes up to me afterwards and says, Artie, I got this information for you to show you that it's a real problem in Canadian men. And she sent me this stuff, and I put it in the form of a slide about why testosterone is a real problem for Canadian men. A cup to protect the testicles was first used in hockey in 1874. A helmet to protect the brain was first used in 1974. Well, it takes 100 years to perfect something like the cup. It's a really intricate piece of equipment. You take care of the important stuff first. That's the way it looks. Okay, let's do the serious stuff, all right? I told you, it's a serious message here. There are 3 things that I don't have a lot of time to talk about, and I'm going to run through these 3, which I think play a terrific role in why women do better. Support systems. Women have a lot of friends, a lot of good social groups, and they talk, but they talk about their health issues, right? They discuss what matters to them. Men have, fishing buddies. What do they talk about? Fishing. They never talk about their health. And I think that has a terrific consequence for our life expectancy. This one is an important one, too. There's lots of theories that women deal with stress better. And there are 3 possible ways to interpret that. It could be that women deal with stress better. Any women agree with that? Yeah, okay, good. It could be. It could be that women have less overall stress. Is there a single woman who agrees with that? No. And then I got this from the Elks. Women cause extra stress in men, so that's... It's probably a combination of all 3. Those Elks were pretty smart. Okay, this is a cute one. There are all sorts of theories that women sleep better than men. I tried to convince a room full of menopausal women of this. I'm lucky I left with my life intact, Something happens around 45 or 50. It happened to my wife for about 10 years, 15 years. Every night, about 2 in the morning or every second night, I'd get this elbow in the side at 2 a.m. Are you awake? Well, shit, I am now. And here's the part I love. This is what I like, Phyllis. She says to me, you want to talk? I said, I'm a guy. I don't talk in the daytime, What makes you think I want to talk at 2 a.m.? And you want to talk at 2 a.m., call your friends. They're all awake. Okay. All right. Well, Oh, you're the easiest audience I've had in years. And I got to go fast. Okay, here, this is what a couple of people mentioned, and this is really what I want to spend the most of my serious time talking about when we get to that. Women make better lifestyle choices. Women follow health advice better. In fact, in every single country in the world where women begin to mimic men's patterns of behavior, the death rates in women start going up, and the disease rates in women start going up. So to make it memorable so that women can bug men, how do I put this, that why we don't do well? Men don't listen, right? Men... I always get women clapping at that. The guys are scratching. What the hell is he talking about? Okay, what I'm talking about is men don't listen to their health care providers. We don't listen to our spouses. We don't listen to our bodies. We don't listen to anybody, and it costs us an amazing amount. A joke from my sister-in-law about the consequences of not listening. These two cars are coming towards each other along a very steep, narrow road, and the guy's driving the way we tend to drive, the way I drove home from Pemberton last night, 180 kilometers an hour, can of beer. No, I wasn't drinking. No, I was introduced up there by the assistant police chief. I wasn't allowed to drink. Anyway, that's the way the guy's driving like a maniac. The woman's driving judiciously at the speed limit. As they pass each other, she rolls her window down and she yells out, "Pig!" What's a guy do with that kind of information? He probably swears and he just continues driving along the same rate. 50 yards further on, he hits the biggest pig in the world. And he's killed instantly. And the moral of the story is men don't listen, right? Okay, I'm going to tell you one more joke because I got 15 or 20 serious slides coming up and I want you to in good mood listening to them. This summarizes men better than anything else I've told you. I got sent this. I couldn't use it on the air. You'll hear why in a second. But it's a good summary. This little 3-year-old boy's having a bath and he puts his hands in the water and he feels his testicles and he says to his mom, "Mom, are these my brains?" And she says, "Not yet." So there you go, okay? Now remember, you're in a good mood and you're going to have to pay attention to some really serious stuff because my job is to make you feel that you need to do something about your health. Okay, we're living longer than ever. Take a look at this really depressing slide. This is a study from a guy called Olshansky. Was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Their theory is that the 10 to 15-year-olds who are alive now are the first generation in history of human beings that isn't going to live as long as its parents. They think that they're going to live 2 to 5 years less than we are living. Why? Because of the great increase in obesity and diabetes in that community. Heart attack, strokes. A study I'm talking about on the New News Today just came out overnight. The greatest rise in strokes in North America is happening in people between the ages of 30 and 54. It's going down in the older group. It's going up significantly in the younger groups. And that's what this slide's all about. We're living longer than ever, but we're living with much, much, much more disease because of our lifestyle choices at much, much younger ages. And it's all to do with lifestyle. This is a study from the World Health Organization that looked at chronic disease rates around the world, not just in developed nations, everywhere. And their conclusion was that 7 what they call modifiable factors, we'd call risk factors, account for 60 to 65% of all chronic health conditions. Certain conditions are, of course, completely due to inappropriate lifestyle. Heart disease, which is still the #1 killer in North America. This is a study from Canada as well, published in The Lancet, called the InterHeart Study, looking at heart disease rates in 27 countries around the world. When I interviewed Salim Yusuf, the guy who's the head researcher, he said 90 to 95% of heart disease, Dr. Hister, is a man-made condition. Cancer. I get all these emails from people all the time about, sitting in a plastic seat or drinking from a plastic cup. That's what they're worried about is going to cause cancer. About 60% of cancers are due to inappropriate lifestyles if you include smoking in there. And not just innocuous cancers. Cancers that really matter. 40% of breast cancer. A study out last week we did on Global. Women who walk a half an hour a day lower their risk of breast cancer by 25%. And that's at a ridiculously significant amount. Walking a half an hour a day, 3.5 hours exercise a week, you lower your risk of cancer way better than anything else you can do. Colorectal cancer, second leading cause of cancer death in North America. All of these things. And of course, this one, when I speak to Native groups, this is one that really leaps out at you because the cost that Native groups are paying from diabetes is unbelievable. These are general statistics for the general Canadian population. Everything that you see there is multiplied as a problem in the Native community. And what's so frustrating is that type 2 diabetes, although the Aboriginal community is, of course, genetically predisposed to it, it's much more common because of all sorts of genetic abnormalities. It's still, to an incredible extent, a lifestyle condition that if we worked at preventing obesity, if we worked at doing more exercise and eating properly, the cost would be much greater. This slide really hurts because, you know, you want young people to be healthy. The general population, by far the majority of diabetics are over 60, 65, 70, so it's a disease of aging. In the Aboriginal community, it's a disease of lifestyle. It's people under the age of 40, the majority are getting it. So if you remember nothing else of what I told you, forget the jokes, remember this slide, okay? This is the most important message I have for any audience. Whether you're young or old, whether you're sick or well, rich or poor, whether you've inherited a genetic tendency for a certain condition or not, if you begin to live better at any point in time, hopefully as soon as you leave here or buy my book, you increase your chances of living longer, healthier, with more vigor, more energy, and more happiness. So the big question is, what should you do? And it's a really contentious issue. You know, if you watch me on Global, and I think a number of you do, you know that every day we seem to present a study that contradicts something that we did 6 months ago, right? There's so many reasons that there's so many studies that it's so hard to make sense of them. And there's so many reasons that these studies vary. These are the 4 most common reasons. I'm not going to spend any time talking about the first 2. I want to just mention the last 2 there. That when you see studies, you got to know that researchers are cherry picking the information. They see what they want to see. I'm going to tell you a little story that should stay with you whenever you hear a medical item on the news. This scientist captures a frog, and he decides to do a study on how far frogs can jump. So he puts it on the table and says to the frog, jump, and it jumps 20 feet. So he says, frog with 4 legs jumps 20 feet. Cuts off one of the legs. He says to the frog, jump. It now jumps 10 feet. So frog with 3 legs jumps 10 feet. He cuts off another leg and says to the frog, jump. Now jumps 2 feet. Okay, 2 legs. Cuts off all the legs and says to the frog, jump, and it doesn't move. He says again, jump, and it doesn't move. So he publishes his study in a very eminent journal, probably the New England Journal of Medicine, with the conclusion that frogs with no legs are deaf. I'm going to give you a chance to think about that, okay? There are a hell of a lot of deaf frogs out there, okay? We see what we want to see, so use your common sense in seeing it. And this one is a really important reason, too. We get these studies from all over the world, and people differ dramatically in how we respond, and they don't really have a good way of figuring that out. For example, if you're very thirsty, a German man might say, I got to have a beer, and a Russian might say, I have to have a glass of vodka. A Frenchman would, of course, say, I have to have a glass of wine. A little neurotic Jewish guy like me, when we're very thirsty, say, well, I must have diabetes, right? And that changes how we respond to situations, what we do, and it's very hard to eliminate that. And then there's this really, really crucial one when it comes to certain issues. The cultural differences. The most famous one is what's called the French paradox. I travel a hell of a lot in France. We go there every 2 years to hike. So we spend 2 weeks every 2 years in France. And they claim to have much lower rates of heart disease, strokes, diabetes, everything than we do. Yet if you travel there, you realize, they smoke like chimneys, right? They don't do any of the things we think that are important for our heart. They never exercise. You've never seen a Frenchman sweat. If you see anybody running in Paris, they're from Portland or Vancouver or San Francisco. They're not French. And then the way they eat, it's all butter and fat. I once made the mistake of asking our B&B owner where I could get a low-fat meal. We were in the south of France. He said, go to London. And he was right. So what's the explanation for the French paradox? We like to have simple explanations. So people have come up with an explanation for why this is so. What do they blame it on? Well, I'll show you. Everybody thinks it's the wine, right? The French wine, that explains all the differences. Can you see that? That's a French army knife. Okay, you don't like it. All right, I'll go on to the next. Well, this one you like. How we see that. This, I'm talking about cultural differences and how we do this. We're only supposed to drink 1 to 2 glasses of wine a day. So, right? So I want you to understand that. That's the background to what I'm about to tell you. That There are no set rules on lifestyle. These are all theories that all of us make up. So what one expert says, what Evan says, what I say, what my friend Jay Wertman say, these are our theories about what we think. There is nothing written in stone. And what you're about to get are my theories. And remember that theories are very fallible. Everybody makes mistakes. You have to pick and choose among what you hear. Okay, the background here is very simple. I haven't practiced for 20-something years. All I've done is spent my time on a computer in front of reading the internet studies. I'm probably the most well-read doctor in Canada, certainly, and probably in the world. I don't have a life, but that's what I enjoy doing, okay? I really like it. I know there isn't a lifestyle study that I haven't seen. So after 25 years, I had to put everything in a slide. What do I know that makes a difference to people? I came up with this, okay? Don't smoke. Exercise, eat a good diet, minimize your stress, maintain a healthy weight, get enough sleep. You know what's so frustrating? Every time I put this up, I want to shoot myself because I know that any grandmother who didn't waste her life in the last 25 years in front of the computer would have come up with this in 10 seconds. Every one of you, if I asked you to list 5 or 7 things that matter, would have come up with these things. Yet we ignore them. What we are looking for are magic solutions. Some berry that some tribe in South America eats and never gets hemorrhoids, and that's going to be the key to long life, okay? It doesn't work. Nothing works as well as this. It's hard work. It's not easy. It's not something you can just take in the form of a pill, but this is what matters. You don't have to do all of them. And they matter in different order to different people. I have to get up at 6 o'clock every morning. I hate it. I'm not getting enough sleep. I use far too many sleeping pills on the nights when I'm tense. It's not good, and I should be working on my sleep. For other people, it's what they eat. It's what they do. These are the 7 things if you're going to focus on everything. How much do you gain if you do that? This is a study called the Epic Norfolk study from the UK. Remember, this is in Britain, right? When they're talking about being active in Britain, they don't mean these are marathon runners. These are people who didn't fall down on the way to the pub, okay? And they gave them 1 point for each healthy factor in their life. There was a 14-year difference in life expectancy and middle age between the people who were doing everything right and the people who were doing none of it. 14-year difference. I mean, that's amazing. That's an amazing difference. It's not that simple, but it's in that range. This is the one that I really want you to understand, because I'm much more interested in living well than in living long. If you're going to live 25 years with a stroke, I'm not sure that's such a great thing. It's much more important to prevent a stroke in the first place. So this is a study from Germany, middle-aged people. Forget the last one. I don't worry about weight. I never talk very much about weight. I'm talking about not smoking, exercising, having a good diet. Those people who are doing that lowered their risk of any chronic disease by 80%. Type 2 diabetes virtually eliminated. Heart attack rate down 80%. Stroke rate down 50%. Cancer rate down nearly 40%. It's not magic. Common sense, and it works. Are those the only things that matter? Of course not. You watch me on TV, you know that I really am a buoyant person. I like to have positive thoughts every day, so I think you have to wake up thinking good things will happen. I think some days are better than others. Lately, this has been making me feel a lot better. Okay, but to go to show you how stupid, well, how I lack certain brain cells, I've been putting this part, 29 years, folks, 29 goddamn years I've been flat. So, you know, I'm getting to where this is, I'm seriously doubting it, so I just added this part here. I hope. Oh yeah, here's another one. The reason I added this slide is I was just down in San Diego on the weekend doing a talk and it had to do with relationships, so I had to look up some stuff about marriage, and it's unbelievably important, particularly for men. I have no idea what women gain out of marriage. It's a gender thing, but men gain a lot. We stay a lot healthier. And this incredible slide showing that it starts right during the honeymoon. Well, of course it starts during the honeymoon, but it lasts for 50 years. But then I looked up, you know, while I was doing that, I got an alternate opinion, because I'm always looking for other opinions. This is from Eminem. He says, I believe in same-sex marriage. Everyone should have an equal chance of misery, right? So, you know. It doesn't work for everybody. Okay, and if there's one thing that sets me apart from all my colleagues and peers, it's this. I'm very famous for this. Coffee is a health drink, water is shit. I can put up about 15 or 20 reasons that you should drink coffee. I'm going to go through it very quickly because I'm running out of time. Trust me, these are all true. You'll live longer. Focus on the last one. Significantly lower rate of type 2 diabetes in virtually every study you've seen from people who drink coffee. But of course, there's coffee and there's coffee, so just remember that, it depends on the kind of coffee you drink. What else do we have here? Okay, yeah, I added this again because I was at this relationship, young people. Everybody's into anti-aging these days, right? None of it works. You know what? The only anti-aging effective therapy is death. You want to stop aging, die. It's going to work, okay? But if you just want to look younger, here's a tactic. I tell everybody I'm 87 years old. They tell me, shit, you look terrific, right? That's all you got to do. So, all right. You guys, I'm taking you all with me. Why weren't you in Moose Jaw? Okay, let's talk about a couple of really important things because I have to rush through these. If exercise were a pill, everybody would be taking dozens of them every day. This is what the exercise physiologists push. You all know this, frequency, intensity. This is called Think Fit. I think you should think of exercise this way. Hang on, there's a reason. There's a reason. It's because as we age, what's one of the biggest health threats to us as we're getting older? Falling. And how do we correct falling? We improve our balance and we build up our muscles. Even those of us with no muscle, even those of us who have no muscles, you lose 1% of your muscle tissue every year over the age of 40. You don't want to slow that down. You slow it down by living a healthy lifestyle. It's going to increase decrease your chances of falling. I just have to again rush through this. Simple fitness tips. Unfortunately, this is the kind of world we live in. 32 shoppers stranded for 6 hours when the escalator broke down to the local mall, right? It doesn't have to be like that. Just do more. This is from George Sheehan, the guru of the fitness movement. All you really need to do to become fit is to live in a 2-story house and have a very poor memory, right? Just do more day to day. On balance, because this really does matter to me. I'm becoming one of these delegates for seniors. I'm supposed to be working with the government on senior issues. It's really important to be able to improve our balance. This one, if you're going to do it, you have to do it under very safe circumstances the first time. So do it when you're in a small space where you can't fall over. Brush your teeth standing on one leg. You'd be amazed at how hard it is if you're picking the leg that you're not comfortable with. I'm much more comfortable on my right side than my left, and I'm in great aerobic shape, but I still don't have great balance. But that's not the hard part. This is the hard part, and this is why you need support. Do it with your eyes closed. And I can't do this for more than 3 or 5 seconds. Kids will do it till you tell them the game's over, okay? That's how much your balance is gone. Okay, but I'm doing this talk in a small town. I get this email 5 days later, really pissed off lady. When she did this, she hit her ear with her toothbrush. So for Christ's sake, put your toothbrush in your mouth before you gotta do it. Okay, I spent very little time talking about weight. I don't think it matters. If you're going to do the other things, I think weight will take care of itself. But people are fascinated about the most dangerous question in the universe. Do not ever answer this. So better ways to look at if your weight is this, and if you really want to know if you have a weight problem, it's the bottom one. Weight around the middle is much worse than weight elsewhere, so don't worry about BMI so much as your circumference around your waist. Diet. I do believe diet is very important, but there are lots of people who have different views about diet, so I'm going to put up about that. I like this one. You like that? Jeez, I gotta go slowly. Guys, I'm in a rush here. Oh, shit, they're gonna cut me off and you're not gonna get the best part. Okay, I'm gonna steal one other one. I get all these emails these days from vegetarians, right? Do you have to be a vegetarian? Absolutely not. This is great from Homer Simpson. If God didn't want us to eat animals, why did he make them out of meat, right? I tell you. I'll tell you a cute story. My wife was a vegetarian for 20 years. God was paying me back for something. I don't know what it was. I had done some. So you know what I love about vegetarians? They all know each other, right? They hang out. It's like a cult. So every time one of her friends invited us out for dinner, it was for a vegetarian meal. And here's what I love about vegetarians, right? They would serve me tofu. And they would all look over the table earnestly and say, Artie, it tastes just like chicken. Well, shit, they're vegetarians. How do they know what chicken tastes like? And it doesn't. Okay, so is there a best way to eat? Yeah, it's got this name, a Mediterranean diet, which I think is a terrible name because basically we should actually focus on ethnic diets. That'd probably be a better word. Most ethnic communities, when you go back to how they used to eat very healthy diets because they didn't rely on packaged foods and processed foods. We like labels, so we've got this Mediterranean diet label. But there are 23 countries on the border of the Mediterranean. They all hate each other. They all eat somewhat differently. But if you had to put it together, you'd probably come up with this. They eat lots of veggies. They particularly eat lots of healthy oils. They do not avoid oils. Breast cancer rate in Italy, for example, is significantly lower than in other countries, and I think it's partly to do with how much olive oil they use. They eat a lot of beans, which is why the windows are always open in Spain and France. But that's sort of what the diet is. But it's my idea of a Mediterranean diet. I told you we all have our theories. So remember, wine is a fruit. But more important, coffee is a bean, okay? And so is chocolate. So, all right. Actually, I'm getting to the end of this. You're happy to know. Are you guaranteed any better health, any longer life if you follow some of the rules that I've told you? And the answer is no, of course not. This is from Red Fox. Health nuts are going to feel very silly one day lying in hospital dying of nothing, right? You know, it's... It's because bad things happen to good people. I love this from Johnny Carson. Life isn't fair. If life were fair, Elvis would still be alive and all the impersonators would be dead, right? Life isn't fair. So no matter what happens, this is your future. This is my future, folks, right? Here's where we're ending up. No matter how much tofu you eat, no matter how much you run, this is where you're going to be. However, if you listen to some of the stuff that I told you, you make some of those changes, you put this day off as long as possible, you live with more vigor, more energy, and most important, you telescope those chronic diseases that we think are inevitable if you live long enough into a much shorter period of time. You don't have to have a stroke at 50. If you're going to get it, if you get it at 90, it's not quite the same thing as if you spend 40 years dealing with a stroke. I urge you all to go out and do your own research, but remember to use your common sense. It's something that our communities have lost complete track. Nobody uses common sense anymore. But I want you to know, the only people who use common sense are the elderly. This is a true story. It happened in Texas. A senior called the cops to tell him there were intruders in his house. The cops, as usual, said, no one's available to come over. So he hung up. This is Texas. He calls back in 2 minutes, says, don't worry, I shot them all. Okay. 5 minutes later, 3 cop cars come roaring up to the guy's door, and the head cop says, so where are the bodies, sir? And the senior says, there are no bodies. And the head cop says, I thought you said you shot them all. And the senior says, I thought you said no one was available. Just plain old common sense. Tons of emails from people who think that a little bit of something is good. A little bit of antioxidant is good. Great, I'm going to go swimming in an antioxidant pool. That's going to be better for me. Bullshit, everything in moderation, okay? Everything. This is a great story from Groucho Marx about moderation. A radio show guest told Groucho on his radio show that he had 10 kids. So Groucho says, well, why do you have so many kids? And the guest says, because I love my wife, Groucho. And Groucho says, well, I love my cigar too, but I take it out of my mouth once in a while. Moderation, folks. Oh, I'm going to tell I'm going to write Moose Jaw and tell him you enjoyed this, and maybe I'll invite me back. What else? The only reason I put this up is we live in a culture that demands second and third opinions. Like my mom, she's 92 years old. Every time I tell her something, she says, Arthur, that's very nice. I'm going to get a second opinion. I said, Ma, I'm not trying to kill you, which isn't true, actually. But, anyway, here, I heard this when I was 5 years old. It tells you the value of most second opinions, okay? This guy goes to his doctor for physical. The doctor comes out, says, George, I'm afraid you're too fat. Too fat, says George, I want a second opinion. Fine, says the doctor, you're ugly too. What else? Last two things, so I'll get through in time. The biggest bugaboo these days, for me at any rate, in terms of the email I get, is that there's so much on the internet and people are spending their time, and everything has this cachet of medical research. It's based on medical research. Dr. Oz, all this. It's a bunch of crap. Medical research is not what you think it is, okay? It's a false term. It hides a lot of imperfections in the system, and don't get fooled by it. This is from the late great Andy Rooney, who said, "There's been much more research on breast implants and Viagra than on dementia," which is true. "So soon there will be millions of people with huge breasts and erections who can't remember what to do with them." That's the value of most medical research. I got one more for you because you're so easy. If I had one main message to sell, it would be that we spend way too much of our time worrying about things that we can't control very well. We live in a stress-filled culture. I'm no different than you. We don't know how to relax. So over the years, I've solicited suggestions from my audiences about techniques, strategies they use to relax. These are the 5 that come up the most. This cute one is the one at the end, the sex, because I get that from younger audiences when I talk to groups of young adults. They always tell me, "Well, Artie, we have sex and that relaxes me." And I say, "Boy, are you backing the wrong horse?" For stress relief, because something happens as you get older with sex. So thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to be hanging around. I think I've run out of time. So anybody who wants to argue with me or give me your opinions, that's fine. Meet you at the coffee, okay?
Big thanks to Dr. Hister. We will have our next talk in this room starting in about 10 minutes, and it's on traditional medicines, so hang around.